People who were in a coma, what change surprised you when you woke up? A good friend of our family went into a coma for half a year. Finally, when he woke up, he was stunned why his wife looked so old. He actually lost the last 15 years of his memory. He knew he had 2 children, but they were babies and he didn't even know about his 3rd child, and the memory never came back. He skipped from no mobile phones to smartphones, to laptops. Everything was new to him, being stuck in early 90, but actually being in the 2000. There was a lot of change to handle, but learning you missed all your children growing up was the hardest for him. About 20 years ago, my cousin had a severe head injury from a fall. He was about 20 at the time, and was in a coma for almost 4 weeks. When he woke up, he fairly quickly discovered that his memory was eidetic. He could repeat entire conversations back word for word, and even tell you the date and time you said something. Also, he could memorize images with just a few seconds glance. His memory is still eidetic today. It's annoying as fuck. Whenever he reminds me of something I said in the past, usually something I can't even remember, I suggest that we hit him in the head again. Edit. My cousin was in a coma cause of a motorcycling accident. When he woke up, it's like he was transported back in his younger days. Accent talks like a kid. He is better now after about 7 years, though there's still something off with the way he speaks. He stutters and talks fast, like how children do when they are excited. He has gotten talkative too. So what has surprised him when he woke up is the fact that he has a daughter of his own. My stepdad was in a coma, IQ for about 3 weeks. Woke up and he couldn't find his teeth. We looked for a week, completely forgot where we put them. Then he dropped dead at the bathroom sink in the hospital, out of nowhere. They revived him, couldn't figure out why he could barely breath. Then the hospital set us down and showed us the X-rays with his dentures in his body. They forgot to take them out when they put the tubes in his mouth, blocking his air pipes or whatever. So yeah, we found them though. My mom was in an induced coma for 3 months. When she woke up, she thought the hospital was trying to kill her. She tried to get out of bed, and she fell on the floor. She could not walk. She was mostly freaked about how her feet had lost their form. They were humped over from not being used. Every muscle she had to learn again. She couldn't talk well or write at all. She has different handwriting after relearning. She said she hated how perfect her hands looked. Her nails and cuticles were perfect and clean from not being used. I remember trying to brush her hair after she woke up. Almost all of it fell out. She almost died pretty much every day she was in her coma. She had sepsis from a diverticulitis surgery gone wrong. A lot of her hair has grown back, and she can walk, but has brain damage that makes her seem very drunk. She is always dizzy, but it's been 5 years now and her recovery has been miraculous. Medically induced for approximately a week due to sepsis. When I was in, I thought I was a bird with my wings outstretched that was slowly freezing to the ground. When I woke up, I thought I was in Taos, but it looked like Raton. I was in Albuquerque, in a hospital that I had worked in for years. I thought I was 10 years younger. I thought I had gotten into a wreck, and my fiancé at the time was an abusive ex-boyfriend. I thought my fiancé had found me naked on the side of I-25 and had taken to a veterinary hospital. It took another month and a half for me to understand what happened. I was in and out of surgery and died a couple times in that time. Once, they were changing out my wound vac, and I looked down and saw inside of me. Then things started making a little more sense. I still can't eat cheeseburgers. Back in the 90s, my great-grandfather had a stroke. He was in a coma for 3 weeks, and when he woke up, he could not speak English. All he could speak was the Choctaw language. He had learned it when he was a kid, because his family lived right near a Choctaw reserve, and he played with a lot of those kids. He spoke it fluently at that time, but forgot it over his life to where he couldn't remember any of it by this time. This went on for around 10 days, and then he woke up from a night's sleep and could suddenly speak only English again, not remembering a word of Choctaw. He was also able to repeat verbatim every conversation that had been held in the room that he was in. One of my grandmothers grew up speaking Yiddish and knew a few mostly dirty phrases she would teach to her grandchildren, but wasn't fluent anymore. Towards the end of her life, she started saying more and more things in Yiddish, like it was coming back to her. My other grandmother grew up with French as her first language, but I can't say she is fluent anymore. Language is a funny thing. Was in a coma for 2 days, not medically induced. Woke up utterly confused at the time and day. Didn't know if it was morning, evening, what day of the week. Couldn't believe where and what time it was very agitated. Had vague memories of what happened before it all went black, but they were very confusing and erratic ones. Turned on my computer to check the date, time, realized I would missed an exam, and that a whole 2 days had passed without my knowledge and freaked out about that. frantically charged my phone to check for messages. My absence mostly went unnoticed, and I felt extremely lucky. Then relieved, then sad and started bawling uncontrollably. My last semester at a certain college, I was assaulted by a football player for walking where he was trying to drive. Note, he was 325 pounds. I was 120 pounds. While unconscious on the ground, I lived a different life. I met a wonderful young lady. She made my heart skip and my face red. I pursued her for months and dispatched a few jerk boyfriends before I finally won her over. After 2 years we got married, and almost immediately she bore me a daughter. I had a great job, and my wife didn't have to work outside of the house. When my daughter was 2, my wife bore me a son. My son was the joy of my life. I would walk into his room every morning before I left for work and doted on him and my daughter. One day while sitting on the couch, I noticed that the perspective of the lamp was odd, like inverted. It was still in 3D but just wrong. It was a square lamp base, red with gold trim on for legs and a white square shade. I was transfixed. I couldn't look away from it. I stayed up all night staring at it. The next morning I didn't go to work. Something was just not right about that lamp. I stopped eating. I left the couch only to use the bathroom at first. Soon I stopped that too as I wasn't eating or drinking. I stared at the fucking lamp for 3 days before my wife got really worried. She had someone come and try to talk to me. By this time my cognizance was breaking up and my wife was freaking out. She took the kids to her mother's house just before I had my epiphany. The lamp is not real, the house is not real, my wife, my kids, none of that is real. The last 10 years of my life are not fucking real. The lamp started to grow wider and deeper. It was still inverted dimensions. It took up my entire perspective and all I could see was red. I heard voices, screams, all kinds of weird noises, and I became aware of pain. A fucking shit ton of pain. The first words I said were "I am missing teeth," and opened my eyes. I was laying on my back on the sidewalk surrounded by people that I didn't know. Lots were freaking out. I was completely confused. At some point a cop scooped me up, dragged, walked me across the sidewalk and grass and threw me face down in the back of a cop car. I was still confused. I was taken to the hospital by the cop. Seems he didn't want to wait for the ambulance to arrive and give CT scans and shit. I went through about 3 years of horrid depression. I was grieving the loss of my wife and children and dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was scared that I was going insane as I would cry myself to sleep hoping I would see her in my dreams. I never have, but sometimes I see my son, usually just a glimpse out of my peripheral vision. He is perpetually 5 years old and I can never hear what he says. Edit. I have never seen Inception or the Star Trek episode so many have mentioned, but I will eventually. I will not do an AMA. I've had many PMs describing similar experiences and 3 posters stating such experiences are impossible. I would say more research needs to be done on brain functions. Pre-med students, don't assume you know everything. If you have asked if they can write a book, screenplay, stage play, rage comic, etc., please consider this tale open source and have fun with it. I wasn't really in a coma, but I remember when I woke up from having my appendix removed. I couldn't read. I was 13 at the time and I loved to read books, so I wasn't illiterate or anything. I could see fine too, I just wasn't able to read. It only lasted for a few minutes, but it was very weird. Was in a coma for months. Father took up drinking and was a total alcoholic. Parents split up. Grandma had a small heart attack and couldn't walk anymore. And I had parts of my intestine cut out and an ileostoma. Quite the shit show. I will add mine, even though nothing cool happened to me. I was pitching in a baseball game. Their heavy hitter came up, but I knew he couldn't hit my fastball. The first one zinged by him, the second he ripped. He said he thought he would killed me. He said I finished my pitch and went into a fielding stance, and the ball went off my forehead. I was told I dropped like a burlap bag of warm meat. I was taken to the hospital and for 131 hours, I was out. I don't remember anything after hearing the crack of the bat. I woke up slowly, but when I was fully awake, I had a slight headache, no brain damage, contrary to what those other mothers say, and some stiff muscles. The guy who hit the ball was grateful I hadn't died. I was somewhat pleased as well. Not me, but my dad. He was in a coma for about 8 weeks. When he woke up, his eyes had changed colors completely. He had green eyes before, and they changed drastically to blue. It wasn't even a subtle change. Thanks for watching. Share your story in the comment.